Hello, everybody. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Debbie and I just figured this out. My name is Seth Perler. This is Debbie Reber. We'll introduce each other in just a moment. Welcome to our live video, which will then be recorded and uploaded for you all to view again if you should so desire. Welcome. It's great to have you. We are going to try to impart some of our wisdom here today. I asked Debbie to come here today because she has so much experience in the homeschool world. And I thought that it would be amazing for her to share some of her expertise that I don't have in terms of how you parents can make life easier for yourselves during this at-home schooling time, while helping your child get the most out of their education, while building your relationship and all of the important things. So hi, Debbie Reber.
Hi, Seth. I'm happy to be here with you.
I'm glad you're here. Debbie is one of my favorite people. You all can put comments in the comments. We won't see them right this minute, but we'll look at them later, but feel free to communicate with each other. All right, let's do a quick intro. I'm going to intro you, you intro me. Cool?
Sure.
This is Deborah Reber. Debbie Reber has a podcast called the TiLT Parenting Podcast. Debbie Reber is my favorite education type podcaster in the world, literally. I'm very lucky that she's also a friend. We've gotten to know each other over the last couple of years and have collaborated a lot and helped each other and supported each other a lot in trying to figure out how we can better serve families. So she really just has a very down-to-earth, straightforward style, but she's very sharp. And I love the way that she really explains things from a very heartfelt but very intelligent place. Debbie's TiLT podcast, you can find it online. You can subscribe, leave a comment for her on iTunes or things like that to support her. That would be fantastic if you want to support her in that way. But go ahead and check her out and subscribe and start checking out her podcast. There are amazing topics with amazing experts that will really help you. And the purpose of TiLT is that this is really for neurodiverse kids, what Debbie calls differently wired kids. Debbie?
Thank you for that intro, Seth. And for those of you who don't know Seth, Seth is, I always refer to him as the executive functioning guru. And Seth, as Seth said, we connected a couple of years ago. I think you reached out to me and said, hey, I have some thoughts on this. I can come on your podcast. And I listened to another interview you did, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, please. And I think you're probably the most frequent guest on my show. And just so grateful for your friendship and your passion. That's when, the passion that you have for the work that you do and your relentless generosity in the way that you continue to show up for this community, for parents like me, and for kids, directly for kids. It's just really incredible, and it's a gift. And so I would say to anyone who hasn't already jumped on Seth's list, Seth has so many resources. And actually, I know during this pandemic, you've been really busy making videos. So there's a ton of free content on there that is just so helpful, again, for parents, educators, and kids alike. So definitely check out all of the resources at sethperler.com.
All right, cool. All right, let's get to it. So first of all, I want to say happy Earth Day to everybody. This is no joke. If we don't have a healthy planet for our kids to grow up in, that's a problem. So just want to encourage you, if you aren't doing anything and everything you can already to make the best impact on the planet, or leave the least impact on the planet, I should say, please consider that. So I wanted to start with that because that's very personal to me. Now, Debbie, my first thing that I want to start with before we get, so Debbie has a structure that we're going to walk through that will help you understand how she processes at-home learning. She's coming to it from a homeschool perspective, but we're going to adapt it to you so that you can think through the right questions to be asking yourself. But Debbie, before we even start that, what is your sort of heartfelt message to people? What is the most important priority that people should be keeping in mind? How do we cut through all the noise and get down to what you feel in your heart is the most important message to start this call with?
Well, what I'm really just focused on in my own life with my differently wired child, and what I'm trying to help parents think about, is that the number one priority right now has to be our kids' emotional, mental, and physical well-being. And I think probably mental, emotional, physical in that order. This is uncharted territory, and I think we cannot underestimate what's going on internally for our kids. And so really knowing that at the end of the day, maintaining their sense of security and safety and their mental and emotional well-being has got to be the number one priority above everything else.
Awesome. Thank you. And I always talk about that the relationship is the most important thing. And I know that a lot of families right now are having a lot of challenges. Everything that our buttons are being pushed, your kids' buttons are being pushed. It is a very sensitive time for a lot of families. Even though those things are happening, it's okay. Those are all opportunities to grow and learn to problem solve and learn to connect and learn to hear each other better. And so I want you to look at those as opportunities. So I just wanted to piggyback on what Debbie was saying and just add my idea to that right there. Debbie, when we are designing an ideal, okay, so basically we're going to talk about best practices for home learning according to Debbie. Best practices for home learning, what she's learned over years and years of doing this and interviewing all these people. So when we're designing the ideal home learning plan with your child, what does that look like? So with your child, why do you even think we should do it with the child? Why shouldn't parents just dictate what happens? And how do we design this?
Yeah, I think the with is key. And that's something I learned the hard way by trying to be the dictator principal of our school, and just learning year after year after year how important it is to collaborate and design the school together, even though for many families watching this is a temporary situation. That collaboration piece is critical in order to have buy-in, in order to reduce the conflict in the home, and just create kind of set yourself up for the best possible outcome considering what's going on. And so when you're designing that plan, the things that you initially want to figure out, and I'm sure many of you have done this on some level with varying degrees of success, but thinking about that, the schedule and designing that together, when things are going to happen, when breaks are going to happen, when homework's going to happen. It's all homework at this point, I think. Some kids have more freedom and flexibility in their schedule right now, and others, it's really dictated by Zoom calls that are happening. But you really want to work out the schedule, even for the free time with your kids. Thinking about your work environment, where is school going to happen? Again, some of you may have already done this and tried to dedicate certain areas, distraction-free zones for where school is going to happen, but make sure your child has a voice in that decision, and it might have to change. We'll talk about the need to be flexible later, but that may change from day to day or week to week. And then you want to talk about with your child what the relationship, what you ideally want the relationship between you and your child to be. Now, many of us are playing this kind of weird role of parent, of substitute teacher, of homework monitor, screen time monitor. There's a lot of monitoring going on right now. And it's really important to maintain the integrity of your relationship with your child, that you just, no matter how young your child is, you discuss that openly and think about, how are we going to handle conflict? Like, what is our approach going to be if we're butting heads? Because I don't want to be butting heads with you. We could be in this situation for a while. So how can we design a way to communicate so that we can make sure that we prioritize our relationship? And also, how do you want to communicate? Like, should we have a daily meeting? Should we check in with some tea and cookies after school every day? Should we write letters to each other? Should we leave little Post-it notes on mirrors? Like, there's so many ways we could do this, but you want to talk with your child about how you both would like to, or all of you, depending on how many kids you have, want to be working together in relationship with each other.
Awesome. And I want to make it very clear to those of you that are listening. I know that some of the people listening are sitting there saying, yeah, but Debbie, if we try to get buy-in from our child is just going to say, just leave me alone, or just let me do it on my own, or blah, blah, blah. So Debbie and I will be answering questions. We are very aware that those are issues. So we will address some of those. So basically, and we're also going to give you a PDF of these notes. So what we're starting with is best practices for home learning. And the first thing that we're doing here is we're designing the ideal home learning plan with the child. So what Debbie said is in designing, so you all need to sit down and design. Is this what you're saying, Debbie? Design a home learning plan. Sit down with your child to design this. And you should be looking at the ideal schedule, the ideal work environment, the ideal ways you guys are going to relate. Those three
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, that's where you want to start. And again, that might change. You can make a plan and then realize the next day or in a few days, okay, this plan is failing big time. So let's revisit. So it's doing all of this with that understanding that we need to continue to pay attention and pivot and tweak as necessary.
Awesome. I love that structure. For those of you taking notes, step one is making your learning plan with your kid. And what you're going to do in order to make that plan is consider the schedule, the work environment, and the relationship. 2, Debbie, how can we find ways to set up our child for success and build extra scaffolding to support their learning?
So one of the things that we can do, and hopefully this will address some of the monitoring piece, we can talk about co-working. I know many of us are working or trying to work from home while our kids are also doing school. So you might set up some time every day that like your own personal homework cafe or something where you decide, hey, I've got to do something I really do not want to do. I've been putting this off for a couple days. Why don't we work together? So we're both kind of supporting each other, and we don't have to be explicitly supporting each other, but that idea of we're in this together, we're both trying to do something we don't really want to do. So making dedicated co-working times, again, taking those kind of breaks for snacks is no matter how old your kid is, like my child will meet, if I bake something or there's some, or I make him a tea or hot chocolate, he'll happily come sit at the table with me for 10 minutes, and having that connection time just to check in or maybe even not talk about school can be really helpful. Give them that break, making sure they get out for exercise or walks of some sort every single day. Depending on where you live, it might be easier or more challenging to get out for walks, but making sure that you're getting some sort of exercise. And this is, again, we'll talk later about opportunities for personal growth and executive functioning growth in these days, but this is a really good opportunity to even just check in with your child. Like, do you notice that you feel any different after a walk? Does that help you focus more? Have you noticed that, just kind of get tapped into the way that movement is benefiting them right now, or how it's kind of feeding them. One of the things that I do and always have is I offer to be Asher's assistant for certain projects. So that's that scaffolding piece. For kids who have challenges with processing speed, or I saw a lot of notes from people whose kids are struggling to do writing. Mine always has. He's a brilliant writer, but to write, you'd think I was asking him to climb Mount Everest. It is just the most impossible task. And so this is not the time, in my opinion, to be pushing him more to step up to the plate. This is the time to say, you know what? Why don't I be your typist? Would that make it easier? I'm going to just transcribe. You just write. So think about ways that you can actually build in some extra scaffolding to support them on certain tasks when you have time. I know that, again, we're juggling many things right now. But if we can be their assistant in certain roles, in certain tasks, more than we might in a traditional, when things are normal, that could be really helpful. I have a few more. Sorry, I hope I'm not inundating you with info, but if your child is someone who is more reward incentive, I am not a punishment rewards kind of gal, like as a parenting, as a discipline philosophy. I'm not a consequences or a rewards person. However, I like to build in, like if there's something that Asha really likes to watch Seth Meyers, A Closer Look, right? For example. And so I'll say, oh, I really want to watch the episode from last night. Maybe let's try to do this. And when we're done, we'll meet on the couch and we'll watch it for 10 minutes. So it's a reward, but it's not like, yay, you've done this, you can now do this. But it's a little internal motivator. So if your child has those triggers or those things that help get them going, co-create what those could be.
Can I just, I like
sure.
that word, co-create the rewards. I just want to reiterate to everybody that brings back the buy-in, but asking your kid, what would you want, so that it's super easy and it's important.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Always asking them like that is just got to be a theme through everything that we do. We've been using Pomodoro technique. And for those of you, I know that Seth, you are a fan of this as well. But if you can build in smaller work periods of time with built-in breaks, that can be really helpful. And so I really dislike timers, and they actually, you just need timers for a lot of these kids, especially for certain tasks. And so shorter periods of work time, even more so than ever, I think, because our kids are more easily distracted or maybe having more trouble focusing right now. But saying, okay, let's work together for 15 minutes and then let's take 10 minutes to do whatever, play on the piano or, play with Legos or whatever it is. And so kind of going back and forth can be really helpful. And then I'm a big fan of creating some cozy spaces to make less preferred or non-preferred tasks, to use Seth's word, more enjoyable. So if there are things you really have to do, get out the cozy blanket and offer to get your kid their slippers. And I mean, this is all stuff that I do. Like if I can bring in a little, again, my kid's really into tea. I don't know many 15-year-olds who are into English breakfast tea, but that's what he's into. So I'll make him a tea and I'll bring a little cookie and get his slippers and a blanket. Like I will do all that stuff and he feels like cozy and taken care of. He's less kind of reactive and he's more open to doing something in that moment. So it's extra support. And I think our kids need more right now, especially because they are likely more dysregulated than they typically are.
Awesome. Thanks. So I'm going to recap that if you're cool with that. So Debbie was saying to set them up for success and help with scaffolding. Scaffolding really implies that each child is at a different place. So some kids need more support than others, and it's not cheating. You're supporting, and oftentimes, I think parents get stuck in the trap of is thinking that their kid has to complete every single thing perfectly, and there's so much like, oh, you need to double check that. Oh, that one. Just the amount of time and energy it takes for these kids sometimes to do that, it ends up backfiring in terms of the big picture. So to consider that, Debbie says, that to support their learning and help scaffold and set them up for success. Co-working, which I'm a big fan of. And then the tea and snack breaks, awesome. The walks and everyday exercise, I was telling Debbie before, if I don't move, it really impacts me. Kids haven't always connected the dots between this, but movement, offer to be their assistant. I've never heard that before. I love that frame, by the way. Co-creating rewards, using Pomodoros for breaks. And cozy spaces, which I relate to with environment. The environment is really important. So intentionally taking time to create a warm, safe environment that people feel good in. And then I was going to add to Debbie's list with two things that are related. One is the pre-conversation. So what often happens with parents is they come out of left field, the kid doesn't see it coming, and the parent will just start talking about, hey, what happened to this? I thought you did this. I just looked online and I found out that you have a 0. When are you going to, and it just is out of left field. The kid doesn't expect it and it feels overwhelming. So start and I talk about this a lot, parents, please jot this one down. Start with a pre-conversation, which is, hey, we need to talk. I'm going to talk about grades for a couple minutes. It'll take me 5 minutes. Would you rather talk about it now or in an hour? Whatever it looks like, but the point is, however it looks, is to let them mentally prepare for what's coming rather than just coming out of left field. And then second, concrete versus abstract. It has to be concrete. If it's abstract, your kid's going to be sitting there thinking, when is this going to be over? When is my parent going to leave me alone? Get off my back. I've got this. Stop bugging me. And they really just need a constraint. They need it to be concrete. Hey, we're going to talk for 5 minutes at 5 o'clock. As long as you're forthcoming with me, we'll be done. I promise. Or whatever the constraint is, making it concrete so that they know what's coming. So.
Can I add to that, Seth? I'll just share what we did in our house this past weekend, because what I noticed was just like with homework, my son was falling further and further behind, which was creating a lot of stress. So we live in a really small place and his energy can take over the whole apartment. And it was that kind of thing where 5 hours could feel torturous to him because he just had this homework hanging over his head. And in my mind, I'm like, it would take you 15 minutes if you just do it. You can enjoy your evening. So I knew we had to have a conversation. And so I, at a completely different time, we were laying on the couch together, chatting or whatever. I said, I think we should kind of figure this out, because this doesn't feel sustainable, and I don't like the dynamic that's happening between us. So let's have a meeting this weekend. When should we do it? So we agreed on a meeting. I said, should we do it on a whiteboard? I said, I have some ideas. Do you want to hear my ideas? He's like, yeah, I do. So I asked him first, I have some thoughts on this. Are you open for those? And then I brought out the big whiteboard and we went through all the possibilities for when he might do that homework. Like what would work best for you? Would it work to do it right after the class? Would it work to do it after dinner? What feels best for you? We had all the options. We weighed the pros and cons for each of them. I took notes, and then he chose one approach. And then we looked at, okay, what are the potential roadblocks to having this method be successful? So we wrote down all of those, and then we came up with a strategy to help us kind of defend against every one of those roadblocks. And then we said, okay, let's try it for a week and we're going to check in and see how it's going. So we're midweek now. It's going pretty well. I'll just say we probably need a little tweaking, but it was, I had to get him at a time when he wasn't feeling defensive. I had to kind of be very concrete in what exactly is going to happen here. Needed to make sure he was bought in the whole time, kept the meeting as short as possible. And now we have it in writing. So I don't have to, now it's not me. It's like, no, this is our plan. Let me know how I can help you make this plan happen. And it takes away a little bit of that kind of nagging energy that I know a lot of parents are in the midst of right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Next, number 3.
Okay.
I love this. Oh, you got it?
No, you go. You can introduce it.
I would love to set it up because, okay.
Set it up.
So number 3 is, remember that the real opportunities for learning happen when a child feels safe and secure, isn't in fight or flight mode. So the real opportunities for learning, and oftentimes what's happening is we're putting pressure on, and they're suddenly taken from the prefrontal cortex into the more fight flight part of the brain. And it is really difficult for any of us human beings to learn during those times. But what we are doing often as parents is we're looking at it as a task list, because that's kind of what it seems like a lot of times. But we're looking at it as, you have to get these tasks done, this homework, this paper, this whatever. So, and we often forget that this is about learning rather than completing the task. But so much of school is framed that way, unfortunately. But real learning opportunities happen when a child feels safe and secure and isn't in fight or flight. How do we do that, Debbie?
Well, what this bullet is about for me really is just sharing what I believe real learning is, like what's really important here. So I define real learning as learning that strengthens their emotional intelligence. So anything that helps them manage their emotions better, become more regulated, notice other, their social skills, like anything that helps their social emotional learning. That to me is really clutch right now, anytime for differently wired kids. Another way I define real learning is learning that builds on their executive functioning skills. So that no matter what kind of diagnosis or non-diagnosis these kids have, it is their lagging executive functioning skills that are going to probably present the most challenges for them. And so anything that helps build those, and it could be very uneven, and you might only be focusing on one little area, that's the important learning. And then the third thing, and I think this is probably the most important, if you could even prioritize these, but learning that helps them become more self-aware. So to me, this is the big goal with all of these kids, is to help them really, again, it doesn't matter how young they are, help them know who they are, what is hard for them, where their strengths lie, what are areas of challenge that they can come to understand about themselves, so that they can start to understand what they need to be successful, how to ask for what they need, how to advocate for themselves, and how to basically set up their environment so they can be successful. So, with distraction, for example, I know this is something that came up a lot. Like every time I look at my kids' screen, which they're on all the time because that's where school happens, they're on something completely different. They're not on the school page, right? I have experience with that. And, but that is an area where we also want our kids to come to know that staying focused on that screen and not flipping back and forth is something that they struggle with. And so we want them to first understand that can take a long time. And then we want to work with them to figure out, how can you support yourself? Like, what strategies would work for you specifically as an individual and your unique, wonderful self to prevent yourself from flipping back and forth? Maybe it's making sure everything's closed. That seems like easy, but that's a short-term solution. But anyway, so that's self-awareness and understanding who I am as a learner. What do I need to be successful? So these are what I see as so much more important than the academic things that so many of us are feeling pressure to help our kids reach milestones on during this particular time. This is a really wonderful opportunity to do this kind of deeper work, which, if you've got this stuff covered, the academic stuff is going to be so much easier.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you talking about the self-awareness. And again, you're implying the buy-in, how important the buy-in is. And if I could give parents something, so self-awareness, I will refer to as reflection, being able to be reflective, introspective, metacognitive or metacognition, being self-conscious, conscious of what you're doing, being mindful. All those things are the same, being self-aware. The self-awareness is a skill that has to be built. And one of the easiest tips that you parents can use to help your child build self-awareness is to get away from trying to use reason and logic and convincing and rationalizing with your child to help them see the light, and transition more to a style that's where you're inquiring from your child about what's going on. So I'll give you a quick example and we'll move on. So what I do a lot of this type of stuff, but let's imagine I'm in the office and I have a handful of students there. I go over to one of the students, I sit down and I say, hey, can I ask you a serious question? Honestly, are you satisfied with how focused you're being on your work compared to the distractions of the tab that you're looking at or whatever? And I look them in the eye and I'm giving them my attention. I'm being a safe, I'm not attacking. I'm not trying to reason with them. I'm asking them. And then I say to them, well, what would you do differently right now? How can we do that? Like I want them. Now I know that some of you watching, your relationship isn't like that today, but that's where we're moving towards, where you're saying, what do you want? What matters to you? What are your goals? What would feel right to you? What style works for you? So I want that self-awareness. I don't want to tell them, hey, I noticed this works for you. I want them to be telling me that ultimately. No, or hey,
Yeah.
this doesn't work for you. I want them to be telling me, yeah, Seth, I don't think this works for me. And it is amazing when we really hold space for these kids and really create a place where we're really listening. It's not a 2-second conversation. Hey, let me nag you and get you to take action. It takes a lot more time and spaciousness than I think it's hard for us. We have busy lives, but this is what works, is that I will tell you, I get further with my students having very spacious conversations where I'm really giving them time to really think through responses to me, and that helps them become much more self-aware, much faster in the long run.
Yeah, and that refers to what you always talk about, and we've talked about on my show many times, is the importance of zooming out and remembering what our uber goal is for these kids. And it takes a while, but this is what we want for them to be adults who know who they are, and they know how to get what they need in order to have the life they want.
And it's hard because the parents see the matrix in terms of the task list. The parent, like you were saying earlier, I know if you would just focus for 20 minutes, this would be done and you would never have to worry about it. But
Right.
So the parents have often a physical anxiety, like that's getting them into that. So anyhow,
Yeah.
this is not easy. But all right, number 4, Miss Debbie, get clear on your goals for the home learning time, whether it's temporary or not, and then share these goals with your child / create goals together. Focus on goals that do what. So first get clear on goals for this time, and then share these goals or create these goals together with your child. So
Yeah, I think it is important that and again, we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. I know many of us watching, we know this is at least through the end of the school year, and we don't, I don't even think about this being next fall, but we just don't know. And so I think it is important to think, okay, this is what's going on. We know it's not going to last forever, but what do we want from this time? What can our goals be? How do we want to finish this time feeling about ourselves and about the way that we did school and about what we accomplished? And so that's a conversation to have with your child. The goals that, again, kind of hearkening back to the last point, but the goals that I would suggest kind of thinking about, considering, are that improved self-awareness. Like, how can my child know him or herself better after this? Is this an opportunity for them to improve their confidence or their competency in certain areas? We don't often have this chance to spend this much time with our kids, and maybe through some project-based learning or some areas of interest that they actually can really build some great confidence in something that excites them. This is, maybe one of the goals is some growth in areas of lagging skills. And that could be academic skills, it could be social emotional skills, it could be executive functioning skills. But think about, where are the opportunities here? A goal surrounding emotional and mental well-being, we talked about that before. I think that's, again, our most important thing, is to think about, trying to help our kids emerge from this as mentally healthy as possible. And that's not easy, because we as parents and caregivers are experiencing our own challenges with regards to this, but it's really important that we protect our kids' well-being, emotional and mental well-being. And then with social connections and relationships, what goals do you have for them right now? How do you want to emerge from this? Maybe this is an opportunity to practice social skills, because Zoom actually can be a really nice, safe way, or Discord or whatever your kids are doing can be a safe way to practice some social relationships, or to reconnect with people they may not have talked to in a while, and get out of situations that may have been negative. And if kids are experiencing relational aggression or some bullying or some, unhealthy social situations. So this is another opportunity for growth.
And I noticed that, in looking at goals, what we want from this time. You mentioned you want your kid to have better self-awareness, more confidence and competency, growth in areas of lagging skills. Usually that probably indicate more academic stuff, emotional and mental well-being, and social connections and relationships. What you didn't say is good grades.
Yeah, I'm not, um, this is just me, but I really, I think worrying about grades right now, I honestly just don't think that should be on our list at all. That might seem like a bold statement to make, but I think that schools are they're going to have to change how they evaluate our students. They can't hold them up to these same standards. I know many schools are only grading based on the first semester anyway, but there are some kids, and I think differently wired kids more than neurotypical kids, who are, there's no way that they are going to academically thrive through this. It's just not possible. And if we put pressure on them to do so, we're prioritizing, there's going to be a price to pay for that, which could be that emotional, mental well-being, that levels of anxiety and stress skyrocketing. And I just don't think that it's worth it. So it doesn't mean that we say, you don't have to worry about any of this anymore. We can work towards those things. We can support our child, but it should not be the priority, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I am with you, and I'm not. I don't believe in grades anyway. They're a necessary evil, but if I had a magic wand, I would do things very differently. But I just wanted parents to hear that, we're very focused on the outcome, and it's the process that's going to get you the better outcome anyway. So we're really, how do we engage in the process and these processes with our kids to build connection, to build self-awareness, to build things that are really going to help them build a great life. So cool.
Yeah.
All right. We are on number 5. Help shape their path with organizing. What do you mean by that?
Well, I always talk about shaping the path, and that's a concept that these guys, brothers, Chip and Dan Heath, wrote about in their book Switch: How to Change Things When Change is Hard. And actually slipped that book in Asher's room. I'm like, this is a good book if you want to read this. I don't think he's gotten too into it, but it's the idea that we can set ourselves up for success by, visual triggers, by, all kinds of things that we can do that can help us have the best chance of reaching our goals. So some of the ways that you can shape their path is to have a daily morning meeting. That's something I always did with Ash when we were homeschooling. We had a morning meeting every day. Sometimes,
I like that idea, by the way. Families, that I think is a real winner.
Yes. It's just you can make it fun. You can start with a game. I used to do like word searches or mazes. Like I was trying to find things to make it fun to start with.
I think can I say something? I think it also
Yeah.
deparentizes that in a very good way, where the kid feels like you're always on them or whatever, and having the morning meeting in a way takes you out of it. It's it's just the meeting. It's not you just trying to, like I said before, come out of left field to address some urgent topics.
Yeah. And if you create the agenda, which is, again, you're co-creating everything. So every day in our morning meeting, what should we do? Let's start with a game, or let's start with, I used to watch like TED Ed has these lovely 3-minute videos on cool topics. They're animated topics that kids are interested in. So, you can build in some recurring things in those morning meetings that can be fun or just like get them sparked. You could do like 5 minutes of calisthenics or whatever that is, but having a morning meeting, I think is a nice routine, and it helps the child kind of set their day.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, please.
Just for the sake of time, I realize we're on number 5 out of 7 people, and we're going to speed it up a little bit here, everybody.
Yeah, and I am trying to address questions within what I'm talking about too. So hopefully we're touching upon stuff that people are concerned about. In terms of goals, I'll just say that some people like to have like a daily goal thing. I think it can be also helpful to, on a Monday or even a Sunday night, like what are the bigger goals for the week? And then in that morning meeting, every morning you could say, oh, how is that I know that you wanted to do this week. Where are you with that? Do you need help with that? Is there any way I can support you on that? So checking in on kind of the bigger weekly goals can sometimes feel less daunting than here's what we need to do today. And then again, having a plan for when work will be done and when breaks will happen. So but just that check-in to kind of kick off the day can be helpful.
Awesome. And the only thing I would add to this with the morning meeting, the weekly goal to-do list with morning check-in, the daily goal, you said tracker. I love habit trackers. And then plan for breaks and that stuff. Visual. That's all I got to say. Put it on the wall, color code it, print it, whatever, make it visual, get it out of you being the one speaking it so much and more to a visual cue.
I have some PDFs I can make available of like a daily goal tracker, a project tracker that I used to use with Asher that people can just print out and then use as their, for their home learning environment. So I'll figure out how to get those to everybody. Okay. Should I move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll start. I call this one, I think we're on the same page with this. Do your own deep inner work. And Debbie on number 6 says, check your own fear and your own stories or narratives about what this time should look like. I should have my phone off right now.
Yeah. So yes, should is a bad word, as we all know, but this is actually really, really important right now. And this is work that we do on ourselves rather than externally with our kids. But it's really important that we get real with ourselves about the concerns that we have about what this should be looking like, or what's going to happen if my child bombs out of, and fails all their classes, or what's going to happen if, so we have all these stories that we play in our heads. And again, we're already heightened anxiety, many of us right now. And so we're probably not coming to this whole topic with what I call clean energy. We've got our own baggage that we're bringing into all of this, our own fears, anxiety, stressors. So it's important that we kind of check ourselves and realize that there's no one way this has to look. We're all making it up as we go along, school by school. We're all making it up. So we can have some ownership over what this looks like. And we can question these things, oh my gosh, but I have to, and I must, and we should. Like when you start using those words, must, should, have to, need to, that's a sign that you need to kind of take a step back and question that. The reality is our kids can make huge leaps. We know this when they're feeling safe and they're not in fight or flight mode. So if we prioritize that, there's so much that's possible when they are feeling secure. We know that differently why our kids are on their own timeline. So it's important that we don't compare what other people's homeschool looks like right now. I've heard a lot from parents who are like seeing stuff on Facebook and their kids happily working at home. And our kids are on their own journey. So we need to just check ourselves with our comparing. And just remember that less can be more. So I know there's, this idea that our kids should be schooling from 9 to 3. And if you think about a typical school day, there's a lot happening there that is not learning.
Yep.
So just remember that we can have even 45 minutes of decent learning. That's a win for a lot of kids on a school day. So don't think about having to fill up with busy work and stuff.
Yeah, we sort of have to redefine, what we understand as quality educational experiences.
Yeah.
I had a paper out when I was 11 or 12 or something, and I can't tell you how much I've learned from that experience. Like, learning happens in so many ways, so we can really check our story. And I like that you said check the story. I think it relates to the goals. When you're checking your fears and your stories, refer back to what are your goals. We have this precious time. Every day is precious. What's our real goals for our children? We're at number 7. Awesome. Yeah. So we'll wrap up number 7, everybody, and then we'll look at some of the Q&A. Prioritize your relationship with your child. This is the most important thing and what our kids need more than anything. What do you mean by that?
Well, and you talked about this at the very beginning, like our relationship with our child, especially now, even if, again, we have older teens who we might think are not as interested in us right now, they do need a relationship with us, and that connection with us is just critical. And so when we think about this, I think about this idea of presence. Like, we are really present with our kids right now because we're trapped. Trapped maybe isn't the right word, but sometimes it might feel that way. But we're in close proximity with our kids like all the time. But it's important that we also set aside time to truly be present with them, like not be doing anything else on our phone or thinking about anything else, but really getting in the dirt with them, whatever their interests are, like just going all in, even if it's doing something that isn't fully maybe sparking you. But like knowing that they have us and that they've really got us, even for limited periods of time, is really important. When we're prioritizing our relationship with our child, it's really important that we avoid power struggles right now and conflict. There's the book I refer to a lot, The Self-Driven Child by Ned Johnson and Bill Stixrud. There's a line in there that I love and I use it all the time. And it is, I love you too much to fight with you about homework. Like, I say that a lot because it's true. Like, I don't want my relationship with my child to be deteriorating because I am perpetually nagging, harping on, monitoring, policing. Like, that is going to hurt us. And again, during this time more than ever before, we need to maintain the integrity of our connection with each other. And then again, this goes back to the last one, but it's important when we're prioritizing our relationship with our child that we let go of the attachment that we have to what our child should be accomplishing and really just focus on who they are right now. What do they need right now? What does my child need from me emotionally? How can I help my child feel safer right now?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie. Thank you so much. I asked Debbie to come and do this for my audience so that I could create something for them. She said, "Do you want to do it live?" I said, "Sure, why not?" We are here. So hello, we'll do some of your questions now. I want to remind you, if you haven't subscribed to SethPerler.com or signed up for TIFOS, which will be in August, the Executive Function Online Summit. It's a free summit that I run. You can buy it if you want, but it's free for 4 days, and it was amazing. Sign up for that. Sign up for my site. Go to Debbie's podcast, support her, subscribe to her podcast, do all the things, and look at some of the great work she's done, and leave a review on iTunes or whatever you want to do to support her. But so if this was helpful to you, please go ahead and share our work with others and stuff like that. Debbie, let's do some Q&A. Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look in here. I've not looked at oh, awesome. We got 46 people checking this out. We
do.
A bunch of comments. So Debbie had arranged the questions that we got early in terms of some categories that there was a lot of overlap. So.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, you go ahead.
Oh, I just saw this first one. My daughter is supposed to have an hour and a half a day, and it takes from 8 to 3. It's frustrating while having other kids. I don't know if we want to start there, but.
Well, it's up to you. I think you have so much good insight. I want to hear your responses to a lot of these questions.
I guess the very, very first thing that I feel in the energy of that question is this tension around it. It feels uncomfortable. And the first thing that I feel is like, I want to protect the child. I want to put like a bubble around the child and go, whoa, what the heck? 8 to 3, look, this is not reasonable. Now, For a lot of kids, it may be reasonable for them to be able to do their stuff in a certain amount of time. It is not happening with your kid. So advocate, 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 advocate. Send a Loom, send a quick video, send an email. It does not have to be long. Do not write a giant paper to these teachers. Teachers are working very hard, but they do not know what's going on in each home. And like Debbie said before, these kids are so different from each other. Your kid is on your kid's path. So I want to protect it. I feel protective of this kid. So it's like, email the teacher, say, hey, seriously, like just talk very conversationally. Just, hey, seriously, look, listen, my kid can't do what we are asking them to do in the amount of time. And my kid needs time for their mental health right now and for moving their body and for whatever. We will do the best we can do. I really hope you're on the team with us and will support us in this, but we need to make some modifications or accommodations to this stuff. Please support us. What can you do for us? And hit send. You know, keep it short, keep it from the heart. Don't, you know, I was a teacher for 12 years. I know a million teachers. Don't attack the teachers. The tone you want to take is, hey, we're all on the same page here. We really appreciate you, but please understand XYZ. That's my first thought, Debbie.
No, that's great. Then those were two of the questions. Actually, we got quite a lot on how to communicate with teachers. I think, again, I agree. Teachers are working so hard, and I hear from so many teachers who are also now, hey, they have kids at home who might be going to other school, you know, doing Zoom schooling, and I don't even know how that's happening. So I have so much empathy for what teachers are going through right now. And
they're not mind readers.
yeah, exactly. And I think just what you said, it's great. Just the honest communication. Again, all rules are off right now. All bets are off.
Right.
This
And
is
the
not,
inclination is for parents to see the assignment or the work and say, we need to get all this done. No.
yeah, no.
Why? What's that story? So advocate, 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 communicate. Just
Yeah, and it's fine
do
to
it
just say
multiple
this
times.
is not going to be happening right now. And I look forward to, you know, figuring out other ways that my child can demonstrate their competency or their learning. This is what we are doing. And thank you for understanding. That's it. Yeah.
All right, you pick the next one.
Okay. Well, I wanted to touch upon this, and I would like you to address this first. A lot of people wanted to know about getting buy-in from our kids. You know, that parents are helping the kids review the assignments. Maybe they're having the morning meeting, but their kids are not showing any sort of self-motivation to actually do the work. I got a lot of questions about this in the TiLT Together groups. So what I'm hearing from parents is, I really want my kid, like, I'm doing all this stuff. I just need them to kind of own it a little bit and do this work, but they don't want to do anything. And so how do I get them to be bought in? So I'd love to hear your response to that.
I'm assuming that this gets worse and worse the older the kids get, because the younger the kids are, you know, if you have a 4-year-old, getting buy-in into doing something that's educational and fun is a lot easier than if you have a junior in high school who has had a lot of negative experiences. So one of the biggest problems that I think maybe not a lot of people even consider is that we have put these kids through years of school. Again, when they're younger, it's one thing, but we have put them through years of school without ever asking them what their buy-in is. And so now, again, with younger kids, we know they need these certain things, but as they get older, we're still telling them, read the chapter, do the questions at the end of the book. You have a test on Friday. Here's the study guide, but there's no choice. We don't, not most schools, we don't say to them, what do you want to learn? How do you want to approach this subject? And we could, but we don't train teachers to do that. And so they have been in this pattern, in the system that they're used to, where they have an external locus of control. You might want to research that concept, external locus of control, where they've been told this is what you learn, how you learn, when you learn, where you learn, what you do to show you're learning, and they haven't been given it. So now they're in this place where all of a sudden the parent, and when they're adolescents, their job is to start to push away from the parents and start to get some independence and become a young adult. So everything in their biology is telling them to do this. Now you're the one who's telling them that you're the external locus of control trying to enforce what's going on. So first of all, it starts way at a root level, so far deeper than what's going on. I didn't really answer your question, but the question is, how do we get some buy-in? And I think how it's way slower than you want it to be. First of all, parents, it's way slower than you want it to be. Again, when I'm working with kids and I'm trying to get them to change their life, it takes a long time. And I get way further, way faster by going way slower than you would think you should. Because you see the matrix. If you would just get this thing done in 30 minutes, it'd be done. We wouldn't have to worry about it. How do you get the buy-in? I think it starts with your own regulation, the adult getting emotionally regulated before you have the conversation. So first, getting set, getting centered, getting calm yourself, taking several deep breaths, seeing what's most important to you. Second, starts with a pre-conversation. Hey, kiddo, we need to talk. You may not like the conversation, but I need to have an honest talk with you about school and stuff. We need to sit down, turn off our phones, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to talk for a half hour. And if you're really showing up for the conversation, we'll be done. I promise. And then the third thing is to have that pre-conversation with a little agenda that maybe they can see that says, here are the important things I want to cover. And don't have 5 million. Pick 3, 5 tops. You can't do everything today. And then finally, during that conversation, ask them. Now, here's what parents say. But when I ask them, they're going to say, I just want to play video games all day or whatever. Well, great. Here's the gift in that. You know their script. You know how they're going to respond. And here's why that's valuable. You can call them on it before they say it. So you can say kindly and lovingly and compassionately and not with condescension or contempt. You can say, look, you're probably going to want to say, just get off my back or just blah, blah, blah. But that's not the answer I'm looking for. I want to know a real solution. So you can call them on those things, and then you can have a conversation. Now, I want to be very clear on this one last point. The point of your conversation isn't to get them to do what you think they should be doing when they should be doing it. That's the wrong aim of this conversation. The point of this conversation, and Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong on or if you perceive it differently, but the point of this conversation is that both of you walk away from the conversation feeling somewhat heard and seen.
Yeah, I agree with 100% with everything that you said. Feeling felt, feeling seen. I want to just add to that the context that we're all in. Someone had mentioned in one of the questions, said that their husband described their child as floating. Nothing seems to inspire or excite him right now. And I again, just to put this in context, a lot of us may be experiencing that ourselves, and a lot of our kids may just be feeling that way. And so I think we always need to be looking at that lack of motivation and drive within the bigger context of what might be happening internally. And it's completely normal for our kids right now to not feel inspired by anything because the world is collapsing around them and they're terrified. They don't know what to do. And it can be paralyzing. So what I would also say
Our
is
nervous systems are having a very real experience. We're having a global trauma.
yes. Yeah,
And
trauma.
what trauma is that we feel unsafe and we feel threatened. Our nervous systems know that something's unsafe.
Yeah. Yeah. So within that context, that's, and I keep bringing back to the emotional, mental well-being, but, looking for little things, little opportunities. If you see a spark it could be about anything. It could be an online comic they read that they start laughing at. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Look for little sparks as little windows in. See if there are opportunities to build on that or to just expand that moment, to give them a little bit of that sense that, oh, there are still things I can derive enjoyment from. There's still things that interest me. Be willing, as I said, to go there with them on certain things. Because sometimes if we say, hey, I did this, my son used to paint. He doesn't paint anymore. So I'm just like, I'm feeling like I want to paint something right now. I don't know how to paint. Would you teach me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's like, yeah, I would love to, because now he gets to be an expert. He gets to teach. He doesn't actually have to do the painting himself, but he will show up to help me when I get my project out. I'm just in the sketch mode right now. I'll share when I'm done. But anyway, looking for the windows and not expecting them to be inspired or excited about things right now because of what's going on.
And I want to say I really love hearing that this father attuned and resonated with the child and really saw, hey, the kid is floating. And similar to what you're saying before, that is an opportunity for the father to say, hey, can we talk?
Mm-hmm.
I notice you're floating. And it's an opportunity for connection. That right there is that dad is seeing their kid, and it's an opportunity to build.
Yep. I'm just looking at these questions here. Do you want to look and see if there's anything on there?
Did I look on the Facebook group? And you're looking on the document?
I'm looking on the document. I
have a great one. This one's
this
one's a quick one.
Okay.
Lori says, my son turns off when I try to talk to him about scheduling his morning to have afternoons off. That starts again with the pre-conversation. And if there's a spouse and you and your spouse can be on the same page, have a pre-conversation with each other about this stuff requires strategizing. Debbie and I, when I work with kids, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, so I'm 500 steps ahead before them of what to anticipate. But you parents, you do have to stop, think, strategize before you go at it. So have the pre-conversation. Hey, I want to talk to you about this. I know that you're going to feel like maybe even blowing off this conversation, but for 5 minutes, can we please have an honest conversation about this? And then during that conversation, try to get the buy-in. How do you want to structure it? Oh, you don't want to have afternoons off? Okay, well, if this happens, then you're okay with not having an afternoon, So you see that they could have the afternoon off. They haven't connected the dots yet. So you're actually some steps behind. It's like, how do I help them connect the dots so that they feel ownership of it and they don't have their afternoon and they know that they made the choice. So it's sort of a different mindset in what we're trying to teach, because right now you're trying to teach them, I want them to feel that they have the choice and this is what they chose and it's not working for them. Not I'm going to logic them to explain to them that it would be so much easier.
Yeah.
My brain is turning into mush. Sorry if that didn't make sense.
That happens after. I'm not at the mush point yet, but it could go any moment. I want to tackle a question that came up a lot. This is regards to parents saying their kids don't want their parents to be homework monitors, but we're noticing that their child is only half completing assignments. They're submitting things without actually completing them. We create the schedule together, but they actually don't want to work, do the schoolwork. So it's just that kind of resistance to the demand avoidance to doing any of the work. So I have a couple of thoughts, like how hard to push. People want to know when they're getting distracted and then they start doing something else. Where do we step in? This is something I live and breathe. A couple of things. One, always, is having that conversation and asking your child, like, what are your goals here? Again, it doesn't matter how old they are. Do you want to be doing these assignments? Do you want to do well in this class? Is this important to you? That's an important conversation to have. Using that line that I said earlier, I love you too much to hurt our relationship by nagging you about schoolwork. That is a great thing to say because it's true, right? We don't want to deteriorate our relationship. And then pivoting to, how can I help you? Right? Asking a question. I often will say, and I also learned this from that book, like, I'm available for office hours. I'm going to be in my office working before I cook dinner from like 4 to 7. So if you need help, I'm here for you. I won't remind you again. I'm telling you now, this is what I'm doing. And I'm happy to make myself available to you. But I won't be mentioning this again. I make that very clear. And then
if you can't see my head nodding on the recording, I am absolutely with Debbie on this. And this is how I approach strategically. I mean, I'm not working with my child, I'm working with my students, but strategically, it's the same type of thing. I'm giving them the choice. And I know a lot of parents are saying, well, if I say I'll be available from 4 to 7, they're never going to say anything to me during that.
Yeah.
Fine.
And they may
Watch
not.
them
And
say something at 7:30.
Yeah.
Now, what are you going to say at 7:30?
Right.
This is my time. You got to.
At 7:30, it's like, gosh, I actually am not available right now. Maybe tomorrow, maybe we can work something else out. But the last piece of this that ties in with that is being willing to let your child fail the assignment, miss the homework, feel disappointed in themselves, be upset because something didn't happen. This is all ties into that. And it that's a whole other conversation about the importance of failure and how our kids can learn from that, and why we need to let them miss assignments and do those things so that they can start to become more invested.
And again, what we don't want to do at that moment is to say, see, I told you so. But
Yes.
we want to say, wow, that's too bad. What are you going to do differently? That is something that I will often ask that you parents can write down. I will often say to them, how did that go? I use a 1 through 10 a lot of the times. How'd that go on a 1 through 10? And they say, oh, it was a 3. And I say, cool, what would make it a 4? And then they say, well, if I did this. I don't really even care what the answer is. I want the thinking, like Debbie said with self-awareness, I want the thinking taking place. I don't want them walking away from the situation never having reflected. We're missing a great opportunity for one of the most important things ever, self-reflection. So I want them thinking, what would have made it a 4? What would I do differently?
It's so
Not
important.
me telling them, you should have done blah.
Yes, and that instinct can be very strong because you'll be like, oh my gosh, I knew this was going to happen. And, it's just, so have that moment. If you have a partner, say the words to your partner. And then when you go to your child, go to it in that curiosity, like, oh, or just notice, or like be there to listen to their frustrations or whatever else. And then say, oh, what do you think we could do differently, or what could you do differently next time? I'm here to help.
And I love how you said, how can I help you? I do that all the time too. I don't want to tell them how I can help them. Now I might guide them on that conversation, but I start off with the open end. How can I be helpful? Good.
I just want to say, Rebecca, I'm seeing your post here. So her missing assignment list just keeps growing. That very well may be that's going to happen. And I know that feels really bad because then it feels more and more daunting that we've got this backlog of work and it's like this pit that we can't dig ourselves out of. So again, this is something to continue to work in collaboration with your child on. Maybe there are some things that just don't get done and you say, you know what, we need to start with a clean slate because I can tell this is really starting to be overwhelming. So let's start fresh. I'm going to communicate with the school. I think your daughter's in 5th grade. I'm going to communicate to the school and just say, you know what, we were really focusing on mental health during this time and we need a fresh start. We're going to pivot and try to do this and see if you can just design with your child another way and just get curious, be detectives, be experimental on what might work better since what you've been doing hasn't been working so well. So I think asking for that fresh start, because I know this feeling and the list, and that just feels heavy, especially as a parent. because we can make that mean all kinds of terrible things, that list is growing. Not to mention if our child is wired with more anxiety, that might really weigh down on them.
And for some kids, they can just feel more and more insurmountable and even less motivating to ever start, and not even having the executive function, even know where to start. And this is a time too when you can email the teacher and get yourself out of the middle of it. And if it's a compassionate teacher, you can say, hey, what's up? Could you do me a favor? Could you intervene here and email our kiddo and set up a quick Zoom call to encourage, to make, to shorten the assignments or change them or just cut them off, do the clean slate with them. And sometimes it depends on the situation, but sometimes it's better to get yourself out of the picture. And if you have one of those type of teachers that really are looking out for your kid and adores your kid, ask, can you help them figure out where to get started and what they can not have to focus on right now? And because a lot of teachers, they really get the big picture. And
exactly. There's a question I want to make sure we touch upon.
I have a kiddo in 7 minutes.
Okay. So how about this be the last question then? And then viewers, Seth and I are going to put together some resources, including the tips from here, and we'll follow up on this thread to show you how you can access that. Okay. But just looking at this overcoming demand avoidance and how to talk about this transparently with kids from a young age. I actually just did an episode on school refusal, which is very similar to demand avoidance. And I know with a lot of differently wired kids, they do have that is one of their triggers, having demands placed on them. They are going to push back. And I think it's important to recognize for kids that is a real trigger for them. And it's often not a choice. It's not something they're doing to be oppositional or to be defiant or to exert their will. They're doing it because they are having an anxiety response to whatever you're asking them to do. So just know that that's where it's stemming from. And so that this is where we're going to be making really slow moves. We're going to back off on the demands as much as possible. We're going to try to help get that child out of fight or flight mode, get more to a regulated state as much as possible, and just really, cut back on demands wherever possible. And, when there are things that have to be done, be really collaborative and trying to work with your child to notice what is it about this that might be creating anxiety for you, and how can we kind of take little steps to make this happen. But I think us pushing our agenda or trying to force them, it's just going to make that response even bigger. So we just want to be really cognizant that the demand avoidance is an anxiety response. And so that's where we need to focus.
Excellent. Again, just in different words, the nervous system is having a response that they are unsafe or being threatened or possibly threatened. So even though the story is you just need to get this one thing done or whatever, the sensation in their body is I'm feeling pressure. I'm being asked to do something that feels overwhelming. I don't know where to start. This is abstract to me. I can't do it. And they're feeling in their body overwhelmed. You have to deal with the nervous system first. And for some families like that means there might be really, really, really big nervous system responses, and you might really need outside help and a lot of time in learning how to work with this. And for some of you, it might be taking a moment to attune and co-regulate with them, and everybody, let's regulate here. And sometimes it might be, that simple, but either way, it's we're dealing with the nervous system first. This kiddo is feeling unsafe. And if you look into polyvagal theory, you can look at where they're on the polyvagal ladder, and that can be really helpful too. I'm not going to get into that, but you can look that up.
Yeah. I think that's a wrap, Seth. I think we covered a lot of ground, and we really did get through most of the questions.
I need a nap.
I know. Now you have,
I don't have time
you have a kid to work with. So yeah.
Thank
How do
you
you
for
want to
showing
wrap
me how
this
to
up?
do Facebook Live.
Oh, you're so welcome. Sorry about the hiccups in the beginning, but thanks everybody for sticking with us. And
Go bookmark Debbie's TiLT
yeah, go
Parenting
come
Podcast.
to tiltparenting.com.
Subscribe, and she'll send you a weekly email. And she always at the bottom of her email, she sends out, hey, here's some other things you might be interested in. And then she tells you about who she's interviewing. And
Yeah. And Seth sends out great emails, usually on Sunday nights, I think, but
Sundays
sometimes
at
they're
3.
bonuses with his awesome vlogs and his content that he's constantly creating to support all of us. So make sure you sign up for his stuff at sethperler.com. Again, we're going to put together a PDF of these resources, and then I'll find those other kind of goal sheets and stuff.
I have one too.
We'll put together a little something for you, and then
That
awesome.
thingy, which
And
will help.
then we'll post in the comments for this, or we'll actually maybe start a new thread on this page for how you can access those resources.
All right.
All right.
Everybody, we hope you are healthy and safe, and that you have some peace in your heart, and that you connect with your child and your family today, and that you also, in this very, 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 very serious time, have some laughter and joy with your family today.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Sending lots of love to you all.